There's a number that keeps coming up when I look at retirement budgets. $315,000. That's roughly what the average retired couple in America will spend on just one category of hidden expenses in retirement. One category that most retirement budgets either dramatically underestimate or don't include at all. And that's before you factor in 6 other costs. 6 other expenses that are quietly draining retirement savings accounts across this country right now. Costs that most people never budgeted for because nobody ever told them to. If you have a retirement plan, whether you're already retired or still a few years out, there's a real chance your budget has a blind spot, maybe more than one. Today, we're going through all 7 of them. Here's something worth saying up front. Most people who build a retirement budget do a solid job on the basics. They account for housing costs, groceries, utilities, maybe a vacation or two. They look at their Social Security income, maybe a pension or a 401k, and they run the numbers. And on paper, it works. The problem isn't the numbers they include, it's the ones they leave out. Because here's the truth about retirement financial planning that most calculators and checklists never show you. The expenses that actually derail retirement don't come from the obvious categories. They come from the hidden ones. The costs that send people back to part-time work at 74, that force families to sell a home they loved, that drain savings faster than any market downturn ever did. And that's exactly what we're covering today. 7 real, documented, financially significant costs that catch retirees off guard, year after year, across every income level, in every state. One of them you may have heard of. Most of them, I'm willing to bet, are not fully built into your current retirement budget. Let's start with the big one. The number I mentioned at the beginning, $315,000. That's from a Fidelity retiree healthcare cost estimate, and it represents what the average couple retiring at 65 will need to cover healthcare costs in retirement that Medicare does not pay for. Not total healthcare costs, just the portion Medicare leaves behind. That surprises a lot of people, because there's a widespread belief that once you turn 65 and Medicare kicks in, you're covered. You're fine. You're not. Medicare is excellent, but it covers roughly 80% of approved medical costs. That other 20%? It falls on you. And over a 20 or 25-year retirement, that 20% adds up to something that looks a lot like $315,000. But that's just the starting point. Here's what Medicare Part A and Part B don't cover at all. And this is where most retirement budgets completely fall apart. Dental care, not covered. Vision care, not covered. Hearing aids, which the majority of people over 70 need, not covered. And a single pair of quality hearing aids can run $4,000 to $7,000. Then there are Medicare supplement premiums, Medigap plans that help cover that 20% gap. Those run anywhere from $150 to $300 a month per person. Prescription drug plans add another $30 to $80 a month. Dental insurance, if you add it, is another $30 to $60 a month. Add it up for 2 people, and you're looking at $800 to $1,300 a month, just in healthcare-related premiums and out-of-pocket costs that many retirement budgets never fully account for. That's $10,000 to $15,000 a year, every year. And here's one of the most common retirement budget mistakes people make when they do include healthcare. They use today's number and assume it stays flat. Healthcare costs in retirement tend to rise about 5 to 6% a year, which means the number that feels manageable at 65 becomes significantly harder to absorb at 78 or 82. Have you sat down recently and added up every healthcare-related line item in your retirement budget? Premiums, co-pays, dental, vision, prescriptions? If that number surprised you, just wait. Because the next hidden expense on this list is one that catches homeowners completely off guard. And most people don't see it coming until the bill is already in their hands. Here's a belief that gets a lot of retirees into financial trouble. My house is paid off. My housing costs are done. It feels true. It feels earned. After 30 years of mortgage payments, believing that your home is finally free. That's not a mistake. That's human. But it's one of the most common retirement budget mistakes there is. Because a paid-off house doesn't stop costing money. It just changes how it costs you. There's a widely used rule of thumb in real estate. Plan to spend 1% to 2% of your home's value every year on maintenance and repairs. On a $350,000 home, which is close to the median home value in many parts of the country, that's $3,500 to $7,000 per year just for upkeep. And that's in a normal year. The years that aren't normal are the ones that hurt. A roof replacement runs $10,000 to $18,000. An HVAC system, heating and air conditioning, is $5,000 to $12,000 when it finally gives out. A water heater failure, a plumbing issue, a foundation crack. These aren't rare events. They're the reality of owning a home that ages alongside you. Think about a 74-year-old widow living alone in a home she'd owned for 35 years. Solid Social Security, a modest retirement account, a house that was completely paid off. On paper, she was fine. Then the furnace died in January. That's $6,800. 6 months later, the roof started leaking. Another $12,000. Inside of 1 year, she'd spent nearly $19,000 on a home she thought was free, and her emergency fund was gone. She hadn't done anything wrong. She just hadn't factored in that homes get older right alongside us. This is one of the retirement expenses most people forget to budget for specifically. Because when you're still working and the mortgage is the big number, maintenance feels manageable. On a fixed retirement income, that same cost hits entirely differently. The fix: a dedicated home maintenance reserve. A separate account where you set aside $300 to $500 a month specifically for the house. So when the HVAC goes, and it will go, you're not scrambling. But even home repairs, as expensive as they get, are predictable. You can plan for them. You can save for them. The next hidden expense is different. Most people never plan for it at all. And it has the power to empty a retirement account faster than almost anything else on this list. This is the one. If there's a single expense on this list that has the power to completely reshape a retirement, to take a carefully built financial plan and empty it in 3 or 4 years, it's this one: long-term care. According to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, roughly 70% of Americans who reach age 65 will need some form of long-term care at some point in their lives. 70%. That's not a small risk. That's a near certainty for most people. Here's the number that makes people go quiet. A private room in a nursing home in the United States costs, on average, over $9,000 a month. That's more than $108,000 a year. A home health aide, someone who comes to your house to help with daily activities, runs $4,000 to $6,000 a month. Assisted living averages around $4,500 to $5,000 a month. And the average length of time a person needs this type of care? Roughly 2.5 to 3 years. Some people need it for 6 months. Some need it for 6 or 7 years. Here's what makes this expense so devastating. Medicare does not cover long-term care. People assume it does. It doesn't. Medicare covers a short-term skilled nursing stay, up to 100 days under very specific conditions. After that, you're on your own. Medicaid does cover long-term care, but only after you've spent down nearly all of your assets. Which means for most middle-class retirees, long-term care doesn't just cost money. It costs everything. Take a couple who has saved $500,000 over their working lives. If one spouse needs 3 years in a memory care facility at $8,000 a month, that's $288,000. More than half their savings. For one person, for 3 years. The remaining spouse is left trying to rebuild a financial plan that never accounted for any of this. There are tools that help with this. long-term care insurance, hybrid life insurance policies with long-term care riders, certain annuity structures. These aren't perfect solutions for everyone, but they exist, and a lot of people who could have benefited from them never looked into them because they didn't think they'd ever need them. 70%. If you haven't had a real conversation about what happens if you or your spouse needs extended care, that conversation needs to happen. Now, not later. And speaking of expenses that hit hardest in the most popular retirement states in the country, the next one is waiting. Florida and Texas. Two of the most popular retirement destinations in America, and for understandable reasons. Warm weather, no state income tax, relatively affordable housing compared to the coasts. But the retirement cost of living in Florida has changed dramatically over the last few years, and not in the direction most people expected. Here's what's happening. Homeowners insurance in Florida has become one of the most significant and fastest-growing retirement expenses in the state. Between hurricane risk, major insurer losses, and several large carriers leaving the Florida market entirely, premiums have doubled, tripled, and in some coastal areas quadrupled in just a few years. A retired couple moved to a 3-bedroom home near Tampa in 2019. Their homeowner's insurance at the time was around $1,900 a year. Reasonable. Budgeted for. Not a problem. By 2023, that same policy had climbed to $5,400 a year. Their retirement budget hadn't changed. Their income hadn't changed. But this one line item had grown by nearly $3,500 annually, and it had nothing to do with anything they did wrong. That's a cost that almost nobody warns you about when Florida gets sold as a tax-friendly retirement paradise. Now let's talk Texas. The retirement expenses in Texas catch a lot of people off guard for a different reason. No state income tax sounds wonderful, and it is. But Texas funds its government largely through property taxes, and those rates are among the highest in the country. On a $350,000 home in Texas, annual property taxes can run anywhere from $6,000 to $10,000, depending on the county. Every year. Whether your mortgage is paid off or not, whether you're working or retired, the bill comes regardless. A retired teacher paid off his Texas home and felt the full weight of that freedom. Then the property tax bill arrived. $7,800 for the year, on a house he owned outright. It was the same bill he'd always paid, but now, on a fixed retirement income, it landed differently. This doesn't mean Florida or Texas are bad retirement choices. For many people, they're excellent ones. But the full retirement cost of living calculation for both states needs to go deeper than just no income tax. Run the complete number. Both states also offer property tax exemptions and freezes for seniors that are genuinely worth looking into before you finalize any move. Now, we've covered costs that show up as bills, but the next hidden expense never arrives as a bill at all. It arrives so slowly that most people don't notice it until years have already passed. Imagine you build a retirement budget of $4,000 a month. You've done the math. You can cover everything you need and a little of what you want. Now imagine that budget slowly, quietly loses its power. Not because you spend more, not because anything goes wrong, but simply because the real retirement cost of living rises around you, year after year, by just a few percent. That's inflation. And in retirement, it's one of the most underestimated forces most people face. Here's how the math actually works. At a 3% average annual inflation rate, historically conservative, your $4,000 monthly budget will need to be roughly $7,200 a month in 20 years, just to buy the same things you're buying today. But here's the part people actually miss. If your income stays flat, and for many retirees, a significant portion of it does, that $4,000 you have today is only worth about $2,200 in purchasing power by year 20. You didn't spend more. Life just got more expensive around you. Groceries, utilities, car maintenance, medical copays, all of it creeping upward every single year. These are the unexpected retirement expenses that never arrive as a single bill. They arrive as a slow, quiet erosion, and most people only notice the damage when it's already accumulated. And here's what makes it worse for retirees specifically. The inflation that retirees experience tends to run higher than the general rate you see in the news. Because retirees spend more of their money on two categories that inflate faster than almost anything else: healthcare and housing costs. We've already seen what both of those do. Social Security does include a cost of living adjustment every year, but over the last 2 decades, that adjustment has averaged around 2.6% annually. When real retiree inflation is running closer to 4 or 5%, that gap quietly compounds into thousands of dollars of lost purchasing power every single year. Most retirement plans are built for today. Very few are built for 15 or 20 years from today. Revisit your budget every January. Not every few years, every year. Because retirement is not a static financial event. It's a 20 or 30-year journey. And the cost of that journey changes whether you update your budget or not. Now, I want to shift to something a little different. Because the next hidden retirement expense isn't about markets or Medicare or insurance rates. It's about something a lot closer to home. Literally. Nobody budgets for the phone call. You know the one. It might start with, "Dad, I lost my job." Or, "Mom, we're having trouble with the mortgage." Or, "We just need a little help getting through the next few months." And you help. Of course you do, because that's what parents do. But here's a financial reality that almost never makes it into a retirement budget. And it's one of the retirement expenses most people forget entirely until they're already in the middle of it. Research from Merrill Lynch and AgeWave found that nearly 79% of parents provide some form of financial support to their adult children. And among retirees who are supporting adult kids, the average support runs over $1,000 a month. $1,000 a month. That was never in the retirement budget. And it's not just cash. It's the grandkids' school supplies. It's contributing to a down payment. It's helping with a wedding that cost more than expected. It's letting someone move back in, which carries its own costs that nobody talks about. This isn't a criticism, not even close. This is just an honest look at what retirement actually costs for a lot of American families versus what the spreadsheet said it would cost. The tension is real. On one side, financial reality. You cannot help your children from a position of financial collapse. On the other side, love. And love doesn't respond well to spreadsheets. The retirees who handle this best usually decide one thing before retirement: what they're genuinely able to give without putting their own security at risk. They draw a line, not a heartless line, but a real one. And they're honest with their family about where that line is. Because the best financial gift most parents can give their adult children is not going broke trying to help them. One more hidden expense to go, and this one is self-inflicted in the best possible way, but it still catches people completely off guard. Here's a retirement budget mistake that almost nobody talks about, mostly because it doesn't feel like a mistake when you're living it. It feels like freedom. The first year or two of retirement, sometimes 3 or 4, is what financial researchers call the go-go years. You finally have time. Decades of working life have ended, and suddenly your calendar is yours. You travel. You renovate the kitchen you always wanted to update. You play golf 3 times a week. You eat out because you can. You say yes to things you spent years saying no to, and you spend more than you planned, often significantly more. Studies on retirement spending patterns consistently show that retirees spend 20 to 30% more in the early years of retirement than they do in the middle years. The go-go phase is real, and it's expensive. There's a framework called the retirement spending smile, and it's worth knowing. In the go-go years, spending is high, active, travel-heavy, experience-focused. Then comes what's sometimes called the slow-go years. Spending naturally drops. You're still active, but the pace slows. Travel becomes less frequent. The major home projects are done. Then comes the no-go years. Later retirement, often past 80. Spending on experiences drops significantly, but medical and care-related costs rise sharply, which connects directly back to several of the earlier items on this list. The mistake isn't spending freely in the go-go years. Living well in early retirement is the whole point. The mistake is doing it without a retirement budget that accounts for it, and quietly burning through savings in years 1 through 5 at a pace that can't be sustained for 25 years. The solution is simple. Build an early retirement spending account into your plan, a designated fund for the first 3 to 5 years, separate from your long-term savings, so that enjoying the go-go years doesn't hollow out the financial foundation that's supposed to last decades. So, that's all 7. And before I close, here are 3 practical things you can actually do with everything you've just learned. Knowing these costs exist is the first step. But knowing isn't enough if you don't act on it. Here are 3 things you can do right now. Number 1, add a 20% buffer to your current retirement budget. Most retirement budgets account for the obvious. Add 20% on top of that total, and treat that buffer as part of your monthly plan, not a bonus rainy day fund. That 20% is what absorbs the hidden retirement costs that will inevitably come. A roof, a healthcare gap, a family need, life. Number 2, build a 2-year liquid emergency reserve. 2 full years of living expenses. Liquid, accessible without market risk. This one account changes the entire financial character of your retirement because it means you never have to sell investments at the wrong time to pay for an emergency. Number 3, revisit your retirement budget every January, not every 5 years. Not when something goes wrong. Every single January. Compare what you actually spent to what you plan to spend. Adjust for what things genuinely cost now. Treat your retirement budget as a living document, because your retirement is a living thing. These 3 moves won't prevent every financial surprise. Nothing does. But they change your relationship with those surprises, from crisis to inconvenience. And that is the difference between a retirement that holds together and one that quietly falls apart. I want to step back from the numbers for just a moment, because everything we've covered today, the healthcare gaps, the home repairs, the long-term care, the insurance bills, the inflation, the family, the spending, none of it is really about money. It's about something you built over a lifetime. You worked, you saved, you made sacrifices you probably don't even remember making anymore because they just became part of how you lived. And what you built, what you actually built, is the freedom to live the rest of your life on your own terms. These hidden costs are real threats to that freedom, but knowing they exist, having the map before you hit the terrain, that changes everything. The retirees who navigate this well aren't necessarily the ones with the most money. They're the ones who saw the full picture. You're not behind. You're not unprepared. You're paying attention. And that's exactly what this kind of planning requires. Which of these 7 hidden costs surprised you the most? Drop the number in the comments, 1 through 7. I read every single one, and I genuinely like to know which of these landed closest to home for you. If you're already retired and you've run into one of these expenses, share your experience below. Someone watching this right now will benefit from hearing it. And if this opened your eyes to something in your own retirement plan, the next video covers the exact monthly income numbers for a comfortable retirement, broken down by lifestyle and by state. It's right here when you're ready.